Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. If memory serves me correctly, this will be review number 7 or 8 that I've done involving this brewery. Most of the beers that I've tried from them so far have been New England hazy IPAs, although I think I've had a sour and a darker beer from them at one stage as well. But I keep an eye on what they're doing because I think this is a brewery to keep an eye on over the next little while in terms of Sweden, and I would recommend you try some of their beers if you get the chance. But the one we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases, so fingers crossed it's as good as some of the other ones that we've had from them in the past. So yeah, for this review then we are going to return to Karlstad, which is on the banks of Vänern, one of the Great Lakes of Sweden in Värmland County, and we're going to have a look at yet another beer from 10 Hands Brewing. So this particular beer is called Goblin King. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this one is another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for June of 2021, and I think they released another beer this month as well actually, but this one was the one that caught my eye just because of the name of it. I thought it was pretty cool actually. But yeah, I always try and keep an eye on what these guys are releasing, and if you're interested particularly in New England hazy IPAs, then this is one of the breweries that you definitely want to check out. They're doing some very nice examples of that style. But yeah, cool to return to them. I think it's been a couple of months actually since I last did a review from 10 Hands, so yeah, let's go for it. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from 10 Hands Brewing before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about 10 Hands Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So 10 Hands Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Karlstad on the banks of Vänern in Värmland County, which is kind of a little bit to the northeastish of Gothenburg. The company was founded by a group of friends, but the 5 friends behind this company are Robert Hedel, Johan Eklund, Fredrik Steen, Göran Larsson and Jan Karlsson, and all of these guys own a 20% share of the company, which was officially founded back in November of 2018, but they've been brewing it a little bit before that from what I understand. But all of these guys have some brewing experience, although it's Johan Eklund who is the main brewer. So they released their first beer in March of 2019, which was an IPA called Firstborn. I would love to see them release that through Systembolaget at some point. Haven't seen them do that yet, but to have their first IP out there I think would be quite cool. But in that first year of production they produced around 20,000 litres. But they started releasing the beers through Systembolaget in 2020. You would have seen me review a good few other things over the course of that first year, because they were quite quick at getting these out of there. But then as of June 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 40 different kinds of beers. Most of these of course are New England hazy IPAs, but there have been a few other things. In recent months they've released a sour beer. They also released 2 imperial stouts. I think I reviewed their 2nd anniversary imperial stout that they did, and I think there was supposed to be one last month that I wanted, but they decided, Systembolaget decided at the last minute that this was only going to be a local release, which I was a bit disappointed about because I would have loved to have a go at that beer actually. But yeah, that was a shame. I was looking forward to reviewing another imperial stout from these guys. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about 10 Hands Brewing for the moment. Still a very new brewery on the scene, but definitely one to keep an eye on over the next little while as they build up their capacity. So look forward to trying more from these guys in the coming months and years. But yeah, as I say, that's all I've got for you on these guys at the moment. If you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and have a look at this beer itself then. So as you can see, the artwork on this one It's pretty nice. You always get pretty good artwork from 10 Hands, I have to say. And then you can see on the back of the can, there is the 10 Hands brewery symbol. There, you can see, it looks like Yevo, as to say, from the Beast with a Billion Backs, Futurama. I think I've said that in quite a few of the videos there. But of course, the other thing about the brewery is, you know, it's called 10 Hands because there's 5 of them involved in it. So yeah, 10 Hands Brewing Company. But yeah, this one is a 6.5% New England Hazy IPA. Like I said, released in June for the local Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden, and it's hopped with Citra, Rakau and Mosaic. So Citra and Rakau and Mosaic, we know all of these hops. Citra and Mosaic are American, both 14% alpha acid. Citra gives you a nice kind of mango quality. It can give you a little bit of a gooseberry, lychee sort of thing, or a kind of citrusy, lemon limey kind of quality. Mosaic is, you know, a juicy kind of tangerine note. Rakau, of course, comes from New Zealand. That's about 10-11% alpha acid, and it's got a lovely kind of soft tropical fruit quality. It's one of my favourite New Zealand hops, actually. Rakau always gives you a nice kind of mix of mango, apricot, pineapple, sometimes a wee bit of stronger passion fruit as well, from what I remember. First encountered that hop when I was actually in New Zealand back in 2015. But yeah, nicely presented beer, this one. 330ml can. I think I paid about 35 Swedish kroner for this one, so that translates to roughly €3.50, about a little bit over £3 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $4 American. So yeah, I do wonder if these guys will scale up to 440ml cans at some point in the future, but I think it's just their capacity for the moment makes them release in the 330s, although in fairness, Brewski release their beers in the 330s as well, so I guess it just kind of, so for some breweries it makes a bit of sense. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Looking forward to this. Sugar up the last little bit. And there we go. Yep, no real sediment left at the bottom of the can, and that is what you want with these New England hazy type IPAs. But yeah, a 6.5% of this one. Let me just line it up so that my OCD is happy. And there we go. So, well, I have to say that for a 6.5%, first impression of this one on appearances, that has an impressive level of haze to it. But yeah, before the head disappears, you can see that this beer has poured with a lovely, I would say, 2/3 finger of a frothy, I want to say creamy coloured head. I don't think that is a perfect white head. I think it's got a very slight creamy tinge to it, but it might just be the light in here. I've got a new light bulb, which is a slightly dimmer one than what I'm normally used to, so it could be that I'm just not seeing it properly. But whatever, you know, whether the head is perfect white or creamy, I think it's slightly creamy, kind of coloured, and it looks great. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this beer, if we shine it up to the light, it has, it's got a lovely, very bright kind of orangey mango colour there. It's slightly darker to the naked eye than it is than it's appearing to you guys on the camera. I can see on the camera viewfinder that it's very, very bright, but it looks very, very nice, this one. Remember, the colour of your beer is determined by 1, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of your colour. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. An IPA like this is probably going to undergo a wort boil of 60 to 90 minutes, something in that kind of region. And then any adjuncts or barrel aging that you do to the beer will also, that will also result in more, that will also result in a change of colour. But yeah, it looks great, this one. It's got a lovely kind of bright colour to it. So I wonder if there is a wee bit of, like, a wee touch. It's got quite a rich yellow colour to it, so maybe there's a wee touch of like a biscuity or a Cara Munich or something in this one. But certainly in terms of appearance, nothing overly surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is. As I said though, for a 6.5%, the level of haze on this one is pretty damn impressive actually. So remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oat content, the wheat content, and the yeast to a degree as well. And this can vary from brewery to brewery and even recipe to recipe. So yeah, there's no real kind of rule or trend or whatever with when it comes to haze levels. It's just down to the individual brewery and what wheat and oat content they put in their beers. But yeah, it certainly looks like a lovely New England IPA, this one. So let's have a look at the aroma then. Let's have a look at this and see how we get on. So, very curious about this. One of my favourite New Zealand hops in this one. And as you'll know if you've watched the videos before, I love New Zealand hops. But let's go for it then. Ooh, that does smell very nice actually. yeah. So first impression of this one. This one's quite interesting because it's got a few different things going on. As I've said before, personally I think there's about 6 directions you can take a New England IPA in. They can be more yeasty and farmhousey, kind of rye leaning and grainy, wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and kind of soft bready, and then they can also be a little bit kind of brown sugary leaning. This one, and most of them of course have display a few of these characteristics, but this one is quite it's quite interesting in a sense, because one thing I noticed about the last beer that I had from these guys, the last IPA at least, was it came across as just a little touch boozy, and I've got a feeling it doesn't come across. This one doesn't come across as overly boozy in a sense. So yeah, maybe they've been playing around with their malt bases a little bit. But first impression of this one is that it has a good bit of wheaty bite. It's got a kind of bit of a thicker kind of creaminess to it as well. So I'm curious to see how this translates into the flavour. But yeah, lovely juicy fruity characters coming off it as well. So let's try and break down this aroma a little bit more for you. So yeah, the backbone of this beer then, it's got a lovely, you can smell that there is a lovely bit of a soft, crisp and fresh sort of white bready character in there, which goes really, really nicely. That's forming the backbone of the beer. There are one or two little elements of kind of bread crusty quality in there, and that's great. You can also smell a little bit of wheaty smoothness in the middle of the nose, but at the back of the nose there's certainly a little bit of bitiness from the wheat in this one. But yeah, I like how that goes together. There's a big kind of smooth oaty quality to this beer, which I think is great. But yeah, I think the oatiness in this one, it really kind of smoothens up and sort of sweetens out a little bit the more that you smell of this one. But I do get quite a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy thing coming out of this beer. So the oats, and I think there must be a little bit of like Cara Munich or you know, even Cara Pils or something like that in here. I think there is a slightly brown sugary centric malt in this one, because you can certainly smell a good little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy type thing coming out of this one, and I like that. It's got a lovely malt base to it. This is a bit of wheaty bitiness, soft white bread, big oaty notes, and then a wee bit of brown sugar. It's kind of got 4 of these 6 elements that I've spoken about in this one. So this one might well have a wee bit of complexity to it. So yeah, this could be interesting. I must have had the beer just a little touch cold. I'm getting a good bit of condensation around the glass on this one. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, the aroma on the malty side of this one is pretty nice. But yeah, let's focus on the hops then. So the hoppy side of this beer, lovely juicy fruitiness, as I've said, and a nice green component there too. So for me, there is a little touch of earthiness out of this one. This, I think, is the mosaic hop that's giving you that. There's a lovely big, you know, you're getting a big floral aromaticity out of this too, but it doesn't come across as being overly bitter in a sense, which is really interesting. So nice big floral aromatic quality coming out of this beer. But I do think, yeah, it works really, really nicely in a sense. So yeah, all of these hops, of course, you know, Racal is about 11% alpha acid, Citron Mosaic are, you know, big 14% things. They're all capable of giving you a big green component in the beer. But remember, New England IPAs are relying on late edition hops, whereas West Coast IPAs tend to have a lot more early edition hops. Your early edition hops during the wort boil, of course, are the ones that give you the bitterness, and as you progress through the wort boil, you've got a trade-off from bitterness toward flavour and aroma. So New England hazy IPAs tend to rely a lot more on late edition hops and dry hopping, of course. But you know, West Coast IPAs have those and a lot more early edition hops. But yeah, you get a lovely bit of the more that you smell of this beer, the sort of brighter the floral aromaticity gets, and I think it starts to lean towards a kind of more grassy, citrusy kind of thing. So that makes me wonder, I think they might have put a wee bit of everything in as the early edition hop in this one, just to give the beer a little touch of bitterness. But yeah, the aroma hop in this, the aroma that you're getting out of this one on the hoppy side of things is great. But green component for me, nice bright floral aromaticity, good little bit of grassy zestiness, and a wee touch of earthiness sitting in behind it as well. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, I like how this goes together. On the fruity side of the beer, for me, it's kind of interesting because you do get a little bit of that kind of more pungent tropical fruit. There's definitely a wee bit of passion fruit in there for sure, and you know, Citra and Racal are both capable of giving you that. Then there's a big juicy and almost slightly oily mango out of this one, which I think is great. And then you've also got a wee bit, you know, you're getting wee touches of apricot and things like that in this. There's a few you know, pineapple, apricot kind of notes in this, but I would say that overall the tropical side of the beer leans a bit towards that big juicy mango, and there is just a wee bit of a passion fruity quality in behind it. So I really like how this one, I really like how it goes together in that sense. But yeah, the tropical fruity side of this one is really nice. I would say that you get a little bit of a tangerine orange out of this one, but I think the mosaic honestly takes a little bit of a back seat in this compared to the Racal and the Citra. So yeah, a little touch of the tangerine orange that you would expect of mosaic, but not too much, to be honest with you. I wonder if it will come out a little bit more in the flavour of the beer. But yeah, the fruity part of the beer, a lot of mango and a good bit of a kind of pungent passion fruit in there as well. But yeah, a very nice smelling beer, I have to say. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma, but definitely take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck in. But I think it's time for us to try this beer now. So yeah, this one is the Goblin King, 6.5% New England IPA from 10 Hands Brewing in Karlstad on the banks of Vänern in Värmland County here in Sweden. Nice to return to these guys after a little while. Still annoyed that I couldn't get that Imperial Stout, but what can you do? Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Ah, nice, okay. That's interesting, this one. It's quite, it comes across as, you know, quite wet and drinkable, this beer. And it's got a good little bit of kind of creaminess in the malt base. It doesn't quite have the bite that we've had from some of the other 10 Hands ones previously. Interesting though. It is quite an interesting beer, this one. Yeah, worth trying for sure. Definitely worth trying. But yeah, once your mouth adjusts to this one a little bit, you do start to get a few more things coming out of it. And it is a nice beer, this one. So thumbs up to 10 Hands for this one. It comes across, this is actually, it's not the bitiest of New England IPAs that I've had from them. And as I say, it strikes me as being a little bit kind of wetter and drinkable in a sense, which is kind of interesting. So a little bit, you know, as I say, a little bit kind of more crisp and things, but maybe I'm drinking this beer at a slightly too low temperature. I need to check the temperature of that fridge, actually, but I think it's about 7, I think it's set about 7 degrees, which should be fine. You know, you bring the beer out, you do the rest of the video, and then it should have warmed up a little bit by then. But yeah, another interesting beer from 10 Hands. Let's break down the flavour for you a little bit more and describe it a wee bit more in depth. But yeah, straight away across the middle of your palate then you can feel that nice sort of crisp white bready quality in there. It does get a little touch more grainy the further you go into the aftertaste, and I get a wee hint of a kind of bread crusty quality coming out of this one as well. But yeah, the malt, that malty backbone of the beer is quite interesting to see. You get a lot of kind of bready crispness out of this one and a wee bit of bread crust. That's the backbone of that beer. But on top, and that's the middle third of your palate, of course. So on top of that, you get a nice little layer of a smooth kind of wheaty quality, which is interesting. Then on top of that, you get some really nice more, how do you say, you get a little bit more of a kind of oaty, creamy kind of thing coming out of the beer too, which I really like. So yeah, the oatiness I think thickens up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, but it's not quite as thick and creamy, if you like, as the aroma would give you the impression of it being. So yeah. But I do think the malt base sweetens up and thickens up a little bit as the beer kind of airs out and opens up in a sense. So the oaty character, as I say, that sits on top of that kind of smooth wheaty layer that the beer has. But you can feel down the middle line of your palate, that's where the oats are kind of sitting, and in particular in the very dead centre of that middle third of your palate, it's got a more, it has got a more kind of sweet, it's got a bigger sweetness to the oats, and as you move further out from the centre of your palate, it really kind of builds up on that, so you get a nice kind of sweetness as you push further out towards the further edges of your palate, so you can feel that the oats kind of just spread out a little bit and smooth out the beer. But in that dead centre of your palate, that's where you get some of the brown sugary elements out of this one. So there's a wee bit of that kind of Werther's Original sort of butter candy, brown sugary sort of thing coming out of the beer, which I really like. I enjoy that. So yeah, nice. As we say, kind of brown sugary elements in there. But I think it's a kind of, as I say, a slightly oily Werther's Original type thing. And then as you go into the dead centre of your palate, maybe you get a straight up sweet caramel, and you can also feel one or two little biscuity elements as you move out towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate. But yeah, I don't think there's too much else to say about the middle third of your tongue in this one. But as I say, the beer is not quite as, pardon me, thick and things as I thought it was going to be. But that could be that I'm just drinking it a little bit too cold, if you like. So as I say, you need to check the temperature of the fridge, but it's still nice. Border region then between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of bready build up again, a wee touch of bread crust, and as you move into that back third of your palate, you can feel the wheaty character gradually gets a little bit more bitey towards the very back of the tongue, and you can feel a wee bit of the oaty character sitting on top of that too. But on top of both of those, you've got the more yeasty elements of the beer, so you can feel that more airy, yeasty quality coming out of the beer. So when you start from the back of the palate, you can feel the flavour is quite tall in a sense, and you've got these airy kind of yeasty bready sort of things. But as you move further forward, it condenses down. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it gets, it feels a little bit more kind of squashed together and a wee bit condensed in a sense. But I think that covers everything that we really need to say about the malt base in this beer. It's nicely put together, and as I say, it comes across just not quite as thick as I thought it would from the aroma, but it still works out very nicely. Hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. I think that's the mosaic that's going to give you that rather than the other two. But as you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you push forward towards the front corners of your palate, you get a nice big floral aromatic component to this one, which I really like. So yeah, I think that works out quite well in this beer too. But the green component of this one is actually quite soft in a sense. It's just got a little tiny touch of spiciness on the front kind of corners of your palate, but round the front curve of the tongue, there's a little bit of grassiness in there, and it does give you a wee touch of zestiness to the beer as well, which I can certainly appreciate. So thumbs up to 10 hands for the green component here. I think the green component works out quite nicely, and in fairness, the sides of your palate develop a little bit more bitterness the further you go into the aftertaste too. But yeah, in terms of the fruity part of the beer then, let's look at that. So as I always say, the fruity part of the beer is the front third of your palate. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a wee bit of a bready build up there. It's a wee touch more grainy underneath. Of course, then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more of a kind of smooth oaty sort of thing, and you can feel the oats. This beer, I'm not sure how long it's been in the can, but you can feel it doing a little bit of that, the kind of emulsifying is not the right word, but you can feel the sort of the oats and the kind of wheaty character just kind of coming together a little bit, and it gives you there's a wee touch of kind of chalkiness under the front third of the palate, and that happens when New England IPAs start to get a little touch older. I'm noticing the start of that underneath the kind of front tip of the tongue, just get a little bit of that chalkiness from the oat and the wheat. But yeah, sitting on top of that, you get some nice really nice passion fruity elements in there. You get some nice, on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And then at the back, the front third of your palate, you'll get a wee bit of passion fruit. And then as you move, it's not quite as pungent as the aroma would have you believe as well, but as you move further forward, you start to get a more juicy mango-y quality, and a few apricot-y and pineapple-y kind of things to the beer as well, which I think works great. And then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, that's when you start to get some of the more mosaic-y notes out of this, and the mosaic definitely shows its face a little bit more the further that you go into into that front third of your palate. So it's got a little bit more of a juicy kind of tangerine element coming out of it. But yeah, the fruity notes in this one are quite interesting. I think the further you go into the aftertaste, you get a wee bit of pineapple, you get a wee bit of, you get a little touch of a more apricot-y kind of thing as well. The complexity of the fruit is definitely on the tropical side of things, but the mosaic is there showing you just a little bit of that lighter, juicy kind of tangerine. And I think it works quite well, actually. So yeah, quite an interesting beer, this one, in a sense. And I think the mosaic and the racal and the citra in this one go together quite nicely. The tropical combination you get from these beers is quite nice, actually, and then mosaic just adds a wee bit of a citrusy quality there. I think just before the very front tip of the tongue as well, you do get a wee touch of lime, which is most likely to be the citra, I would say. I think there's a wee touch of lime just before the very front tip of the tongue when you get these grassy esters. But overall, this is a really interesting beer for me, and I think it works out quite nicely. So yeah, enjoyed reviewing this one. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off the review, what can we say about this? It's a mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is quite is very smooth in this one for sure. Yeah, and it feels, it's got a little bit of a kind of wet cleanliness to it, but at the same time there's a bit of a creamy backbone. But yeah, overall, it's got quite a it strikes me as being, it's got a little bit of a kind of, how would we say, you can feel that there's a thickness sitting in this beer, but it doesn't quite come out in a sense, because I think it just comes across, the whole beer comes across as being a bit wetter and crisper in a sense. So there's a really interesting thing going on with the mouthfeel here that I can't quite put my finger on. But the malty side of things, it's got a bit of smoothness underneath, a bit of lighter bready quality, then a bit of a thicker oaty sort of thing. There's some nice hoppy character in there, a bit of a kind of hoppy bitterness. As well as I think this beer might have a little touch more bitterness to it, maybe about 40 IBUs, something like that. It does feel a little touch more bitter, this one, so potentially 40 IBUs there. Nice, smooth, malty side of things. A little bit of a kind of brown sugary quality, and also some juicy fruity characters to the beer as well. So yeah, I like how this one, I do like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. It leans more towards the tropical side of things, but just with a little bit of a lighter citrusy quality in there too. But yeah, another solid beer from 10 Hands Brewing, the Goblin King, 6.5% New England IPA. I think it's worked out pretty nicely, this one. So yeah, need to keep an eye on what they're releasing over the next little while. I still want to have a go at their firstborn, and I'll need to see if they're going to re-release that Imperial Stout later as well. If they can re-release that as a sort of nationwide release, that would be great. But yeah, that's all I can really say about this beer for the moment. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from 10 Hands Brewing as well. I've got no doubt we'll return to these guys at some point in the near future. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out 10 Hands Brewing. Let me know any other breweries you would recommend that I have a look at. But thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. This was the Goblin King, 6.5% New England IPA from 10 Hands Brewing in Karlstad in Värmland here in Sweden. Slange, skull, cheers, and see you guys on the next review.